When we pray, we tend to have a particular mindset, a preconceived notion about what the answer to our prayer is actually going to look like. What happens if the answer looks nothing like we had anticipated? Hi, this is Barry Phillips, a 10-minute Torah, day one of the Torah portion, Toldot, generations, and we're going to be dealing this week with a character, or maybe we should say a something, called Esav. Let's begin in Bereshit, or Genesis chapter 25, and it's let's go down to verse number 19 that says, and this is the genealogy of Yitzhak, Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham brought forth Yitzhak, and Yitzhak was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, as wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Aramean of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean. And Yitzhak prayed to Yahweh for his wife, for she was barren. Yahweh answered his prayer, and Rivkah his wife conceived. Within her, the children struggled together, and she said, if all is right, why am I this way? So she went to ask Yahweh. Yahweh said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people shall be separated forth from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. When the days were filled for her to give birth, and see, twins were in her womb, and the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, so they called his name Esav. Esav, this we make Yaakov an extremely important character, and he is. The balance of the rest of Bereshit is about Yaakov and then Joseph. These 2 characters will fill the pages of much of the rest of what we read here in Bereshit or Genesis. Esav tends to be relegated to the marginal sidelines and ridiculed as one who is unworthy of consideration. But without Esav, the story is incomplete. Maybe you've heard the phrase, it's all in the genes, or something similar is said, you're just like your dad or your grandfather or your mom. The genes tend to have a lot to say about who we are. Not one of us, not one person on the face of the earth had any choice as to what family they would be born into, what genetic makeup and DNA that they would receive, and in their conception. None of us have any control of our ethnicity or our language or our racial color profiles or any of those things. And just a little side note here, you are more than the sum of your parts. You look in the mirror and you see your particular features and stature and all of those things, body types, but that does not have to define who you are. You are actually the living being within, on the inside of the physical vehicle that you've been given to ride in. So don't let anyone marginalize you, criticize you, treat you with contempt or disdain because of how you may physically look. A lot of those things are beyond your control. Some are, but many are not. Anyway, that said, we would wonder then, how is it that Esav and Yaakov came out of the very same womb at the same approximate time? Esav born, and then we read in verse 26, afterward his brother came out with his hand holding on to Esav's heel, so his name was called Yaakov. And Yitzhak was 60 years old when Rivkah bore them. So if he was 40 years old when they got married, and 60 when she finally conceived and gave birth, there's a 20-year interim there where they were praying for children, because it was vitally important that they continue this covenant lineage with offspring, with future generations, Remember, Abraham has been promised that your seed will be as uncountable as the dust of the earth. If you can count the stars of the heavens, then you can count your generations. They had to have children, and it was imperative that they do so. Yet it says that Rebekah was barren. So for 20 years of prayer, they sought the face of the Father for the ability for her to conceive. What if 19 to 20 years of prayer end result is not just Yaakov, who has his own system of issues and things to deal with, but Esav? Did they actually pray for Esav? This is the one that Malachi 1:3 says, Yah says, I have hated Esav. Praying 20 years to have a child that Yah says, I hate him. How is this an answer to prayer? So Isaac, or Yitzhak himself, is a miracle child. He is a prophetically decreed child. It was impossible for his parents to have him, yet they had him. And they had prayed for many decades, not just 19 or 20 years, decades for him. So 2 decades had produced Esav. Was this his issues? Was it genetic code? Did Esav have a predetermined coded message inside of him that made him as he was? Was there a flaw in Abraham or Sarah? Was there a flaw in Yitzhak that genetically got passed down to Esav to where it was predetermined by his genetics that he would be as he is? Because it's not just physical features. There's also learned personality types. And sometimes it's not just learned, but it has been argued that the genetic DNA code inside of us has some markers that predetermine how we are emotionally and mentally and our personality. So in a manner of speaking, could Esav reasonably say to the father, I can't help it, it's how you made me? We all have stuff that we have to overcome. None of us were born pure, innocent, and without capability of sin. There's only one that's not us. So that understood, then what about Esav? Was it a genetic marker? Where did it come from? Let's also, and it's not to say that Abraham, Sarah, and Yitzhak were without issues or something to pass down. They probably and most likely did have something. But on Rivka's side, the same code that produced her brother Laban also produced Esav. There's Rivka's side of the family. And we have to understand then that while Esav was more outwardly aggressive and threatening, Laban was more cunning. He was aggressive, just as aggressive, but he used stealth and manipulation and control. Where am I going with all this? Well, I want you to understand that there were twins, and you can't separate what we might call the most evil side over on Esav and the most righteous side over on Yaakov. They were twins. Genetic codes were very close to identical. Yet one chose to work through and fight and overcome their issues while the other just gave place to them. You can't help who you are physically in a lot of ways, but we can choose whether Esav or Yaakov lives and is in control on the inside. Are we going to be a Yaakov and work through our stuff with Yah's help? We're just going to say, I'm Esav and I can't help it. More on this issue tomorrow. To then, shalom.